On today's show, the finalists for the Padres managerial vacancy have been revealed. Who is it going to be?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, November 3rd. Happy November, everyone, and happy Halloween if you celebrated this weekend. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including JustBaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Go check that out. Today's show, guys, is a fun little Monday chill. You know, take your coffee, maybe. For my West Coast homies, take your wonderful Mexican food, you stuff it in your face and have a lot of fun. Listen to this one as we're going to talk about the reveal of the finalists for the Padres managerial vacancy, according to Kevin Acee of the San Diego Union-Tribune. Just talking about a couple of those names, some of them surprising, some of them very exciting, and then some of them a little bit unknown. And then going to talk a little bit about some news with Fernando Tatis Jr. and get into your mailbag / listener YouTube comment questions. And if you want to be featured on the Monday mailbag or any other episode in which I answer and respond to your questions, which can be throughout, frankly, but especially on Monday, leave a comment in the YouTube description of any episode and I will check them and get back to you. Let's start though. In terms of the managerial vacancy, this has been obviously the story for the Padres since the elimination, or I should say not since the elimination. The story since the elimination has been like, wow, why are you guys yelling at umpires? And wow, we need a power bat. And wow, why does Manny Machado stink in the playoffs? Those were the questions. But in terms of ever since Mike Shilt's retirement, that has been the big thing. And it will remain one of the biggest questions of the offseason. And I've talked about this before. Go check out my previous episodes. And I'm going to continue to reiterate my take, which is that I'm obviously going to say, let's try something different. For those who have been listening to this show for a while, I'm always about the different, always trying to have something a little bit that we haven't tried before, right? Because we all know what the definition of insanity is, right? And for me, but the different thing is it could be someone who's forward thinking with analytics. It could be someone who's just super famous. I don't exactly know. I think managerial vacancy for the Padres is really complicated. It's complicated in general for baseball teams, but especially for this Padres team with a lot of stars, a big budget, a crazy GM that's not going to give up, ownership that is at least for now seemingly supportive of that, but also a really bad farm system, not as much flexibility. So it is a little difficult to decide like what makes sense for this team and who would want this team, right? But according to Kevin Acee of the San Diego Union-Tribune, the finalists for the Padres managerial job, again, via the San Diego Union-Tribune. I recommend everyone following Kevin Acee, especially his newsletter. It's great stuff. The Padres are down to no more than 4 finalists, with Albert Pujols, Padres pitching coach Ruben Niebla, Rangers special assistant Nick Hundley. This feels a little bit out of nowhere, and potentially an unspecified 4th name still on the radar. We don't know who that is. Maybe it's Scott Servais. I, of course, predicted Scott Servais back in the day. We'll see if that ends up happening. Not saying I want him. I don't know. But very interesting. Very interesting. And we got a lot of comments, actually, and one that I liked in particular about Albert Pujols that we'll get to in the mailbag. But this is just, we're going to have to see, right? Because I think that just with this Padres team, I don't exactly know what they need, right? And for the record, Nick Hundley, for those who don't remember, he's played with the Padres from 2008 all the way to 2014. He had a couple decent seasons with them, and since then, he had been, let's see here. Let me see if I can find it right here. He's had 2 seasons working for MLB Baseball Operations, their department, and has spent the last 4 seasons as a special assistant in the Rangers front office. The Giants actually approached him about a managerial opening in both 23 and this very fall, and he declined both of them for family reasons. Right? So it's interesting. That was Buster Posey's first choice. I don't fully know anything enough about how any manager, like someone like Nick Hundley, like how that would translate. I just don't know, right? Because there's just too many variables and it's just harder to track in baseball what makes sense for a manager who is a good manager. Because one of the things I always notice about at least baseball fans is I've seen every single manager, basically every single manager, people bring up for critiques. They're like bullpen management. And I'm like, that makes me wonder if it's just like fans don't know enough about bullpens and that there's just stuff that we can't possibly understand behind the scenes. They don't just have fan graphs, guys. Major League Baseball teams. They don't just have Baseball Reference for what they do to make decisions, right? They have all their own data and all sorts of stuff that they go to because they, do this for a living. So sometimes I look at the criticisms of all these managers and it's always the same thing, which is why it's hard for me to decide who is a good one. I just never know. The closest thing we have is to just go by wins, right? Usually. And in the case of these nominees, it's a lot of inexperience. These would all be first-time managers, right? Ruben Niebla would be the closest to experience in the sense that he was the pitching coach, or is the pitching coach for the Padres, right? And he's been a part of these teams the last few years in which we've seen so much pitching succeed and a lot of high-win seasons, right? So him, you could at least have a little bit of a correlation, but you can't have that for Pujols. You can't have that for Hundley, and we don't know who the fourth guy is yet. So my personal thing is I just want to hear who it's going to be, frankly. I think that Pujols is obviously the sexier pick. I think that that's a lot of fun. I don't know if it's the right one, and we've seen that there can be former players, former big name guys brought into organizations that aren't any good, right? And some that are very good, right? We can see that. Every now and then it does happen, but look at Stephen Vogt. Like, he did okay with Guardians. We've seen success elsewhere, and we've seen some bad stories elsewhere. So again, it's going to be tough. I don't know what A.J. Preller is going to decide. And I think that the manager position for the Padres, while it is the biggest question, I think, for the offseason right now, I don't always know if it's the most important. I think the most important is going to be, are they going to be able to have a little bit more money because they made the playoffs, because the attendance record broke again? Can management be like, yeah, well, maybe we'll let you spend like about $100 million on a free agent, like in total, right? Like maybe it's possible that happens. I'm a little bit dubious of it, but we'll have to see how that breaks down. What's Preller going to do? Is he going to trade a player that we're not even thinking about right now? All sorts of things. But the manager, look, there are some teams that have been very good. Look at the Mariners. They went really far this year after getting rid of Scott Service. Look at the Blue Jays with not just their manager, but also their hitting coach, David Hopkins. Look at the Dodgers to an extent. By the way, congrats to the Dodgers on the World Series win. I totally forgot about that. Genuinely. I know it sounds like I'm hating, but we'll talk about that on future episodes, what I thought about that. But I will say, I'm not going to do the troll thing. I wouldn't have done the troll thing even if they lost and said, oh, they choked or whatever. Bottom line is they made the World Series. But my overall take is I genuinely think that is the best World Series I think that I've seen in my life. The only thing that comes close is 2016 because it did go to Game 7 with the Cubs and the who was it? The Cubs and the Guardians, or the Cleveland Indians at the time. And that was amazing. The Game 7, obviously, there being a rain delay, that's crazy. But that series wasn't as unbelievable game to game as I think this one is. This one featured multiple extra innings, right? Like, that's crazy. And unfortunately, a bad person, or a real jerk, Miguel Rojas, is the one who ended up kind of winning it for the Dodgers. But nonetheless, congrats to the Dodgers. Insane stuff. We'll talk about throughout the offseason, though, because you'll listen to the Padres. But yeah, who is the manager going to be? It's hard to say that it is the most important, but it is even harder to say that it doesn't matter at all. It's just very, very complicated, in my opinion. I don't know what to latch onto for what is the reason for a manager. But we're going to talk about some of your suggestions about what the Padres should do and who they like the most for this managerial position in the mailbag segment. But first, I need to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. Let me tell you guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing despite it all. Let's talk about some other news. Let's talk about some other news, guys, because I like talking about other news. We don't just want to talk about manager positions. My goodness. But Gold Glove winners were announced by Major League Baseball just the other day, yesterday, in fact, in the middle of, I think, a football game I was watching, 8:31 Central Time. Yeah, I think I was watching the game at that time. But anyway, for the National League, the winners for catcher was Patrick Bailey for the Gold Glove. No surprise there for anyone who follows the Giants, the best defensive player, dare I say, maybe in all of baseball, but definitely at the catcher position. Finalists being Carson Kelly, Luis Torrens. First base, Matt Olson won the award. Finalists Bryce Harper and Spencer Steer. Second base, Nico Horner. of the Chicago Cubs won, and Padres fans are very familiar with him, especially based off of that series, right? Not the best series for the Padres, obviously, but some great defense by them, very well deserved, with finalist Xavier Edwards, who you guys might remember. You guys remember Xavier Edwards? Yeah, he was the one that the Padres sent actually to the Rays in the Tommy Pham trade. Now, you might immediately think, oh no, did this guy turn out okay? He was a 2.5 win player this year, plays good defense, hits for a decent average. Like, he's okay, he's a good player, but Jay Cronenworth is good, and bottom line is, it's different teams with different needs at different times, right? But Xavier Edwards being the other finalist, alongside Bryce Durang. Third base, Ke'Bryan Hayes won the Gold Glove, along with finalists Ryan McMahon and Matt Shaw. Look, I know some people wonder about Manny. We actually talked about in the player review that I did a couple weeks ago, so go check that out for my everydayers, of course, know what I'm talking. But Manny Machado's defense slipping a little bit. The arm strength is there. He's got a good, notice for the ball, but the range seems to be a little bit gone in his old age. So he's not that level. Ke'Bryan Hayes is a freak. Oh, right, at third base. If he never figures out to hit, he will always be in Major League Baseball for his defense alone. That's how good he is. With Ryan McMahon and Matt Shaw being the runners-up. Mason Wynn winning for shortstop. Nick Allen and Mookie Betts actually were the finalists. And you could argue that maybe Xander Bogaerts, should he have been involved in this one, right? This is actually a genuinely fair thing, and I want to talk about that for a second. Xander Bogaerts had really, really, really solid numbers this year at shortstop. He was actually, it's kind of what carried a lot of his value this year, was transforming into a really, really good defender. And was that correct? Well, let's break into it. If you want to go by a defensive run saved, Mookie Betts, he had 17. Xander Bogaerts did add -4, right? Now, defensive run saved aren't the only stat, though. If you go to outs above average, Bobby Witt Jr. had 24. He led. Then it was Mason Wynn of the St. Louis Cardinals with 21, and Xander Bogaerts with 7. Don't get me wrong, played great defense this year, but those guys were really, really electric, so we'll have to see. But again, it's not a bad thing, necessarily. Not a bad thing at all. In left field, Ian Happ won over Tommy Pham and Kyle Stowers. Tommy Pham, surprising, by the way. He was not the best defender, but he had a good year, so shouts to him. Center field, Pete Armstrong, of course, over Victor Scott II and Jacob Young. Utility players, Javier Sanoa won over Miguel Rojas and Jared Triolo. And then pitchers, Logan Webb won over Matthew Boyd, David Peterson. But of course, last but not least, Fernando Tatis Jr., a winner of another Gold Glove. You absolutely love to see it. I believe this is his third Gold Glove. Is this his third? Gotta find this right now. He's got a gold. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's his third glove in general. But he's got a Gold Glove over at shortstop. I don't know if you guys remember. He actually had a really good shortstop season, granted in a truncated 2020, right? But he had that. Then he had the Platinum Glove, and now he gets a Gold Glove. Did not get the Platinum this year, but look, I just want to talk about Tatis for a second. I've gotten some comments on here every now and then that are like, Javi, you're an idiot. He's not a superstar. Javi, you're an idiot. He's not a Hall of Fame player. Potentially, you're out of your mind. And I want to just say, if Fernando Tatis Jr. does what he did this year, right? If he just does the same thing that he did this year, which was a 6-win player, 6 wins above replacement, which was top 10 among all major league players, right? 131 WRC plus. Yes, he only hit 25 home runs. I understand that, but scored a lot of runs, had an incredible walk rate, and an incredible defensive year. That's a Hall of Fame potential player if he just does this for a while longer, right? Look at Andrew Jones. Right, Andrew Jones arguably should be a Hall of Famer, and Tatis is much more talented, potentially, offensively than he is, right? I just think that he's really great. And I think that the whole superstar argument, I think that that's a little bit semantics, and I think it depends on what people are talking about. If you're talking about, are you a elite S-tier player versus just an A player, then that's one version of viewing superstar versus star. If you're talking about, who's, sexy and who, gets all the highlights, who has the moments that make you so memorable, not just numbers, right? Who has the Patrick Mahomes game-winning drive, right? Stuff like that. The Josh Allen game-winning drive in the case of yesterday's game. Shout out to the Bills. Then that's another thing. But to me, those depend a little bit on circumstance sometimes, right? And media coverage, right? And even if you wanted to get into that, Tatis is super popular. You guys have seen the commercials of him dancing with all the new era hats. He's still super popular, and I do still believe he's a superstar. But he's definitely one that is, I think the casuals don't realize how good he is because they don't take into account his walk rate, his speed, his incredible plate discipline, right? All that stuff. And of course, his defense, right? And we're going to see, because his ability to hit the ball hard is still there. His average exit velocity is still there. He just needs to put the ball in the air more, have a better barrel rate, and, pull the ball more into the air. And then I would not be surprised if maybe more of his hits turn into home runs next year. But for now, that's where we are with Fernando Tatis Jr. And that's it for just the news, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get into some of our listener questions and comments, and to which we got a bunch of them. And I love it. I love it so much. And we even got some nice little kind comments, right? Shout out to @SilentABard says, I'm an everydayer on Locked On Angels, Javi. Your channel popped up on my YouTube, and I'm digging the Naruto stuff, man. Of course, referring to my background. Everybody, if you want to see the background, you want to see all the little books and stuff, I actually haven't edited the background in a while. I kind of want to replace some things. I've got some comic books. I got Pikachu here. I've got a Superman, not really Superman book, but I've got a Supergirl book. I've got Spider-Man. I've got Stitch. And, of course, I have my lovely hat that I got in San Diego. If you guys are wondering where I got this black hat with the rose, which is just fantastic, I got it from a random flea market spot outside the stadium, right? So this isn't a thing that I don't know if you can buy it online. Maybe it's on eBay somewhere, but I love the hat and I hope you do too. But thank you for appreciating the setup. And yes, everybody go watch Naruto if you need just a great show. You know what I mean? I love anime. Anime is just the best. But yeah, that is very much appreciated, especially for people who aren't Padres fans. I always love hearing from you guys. Very, very much. Another comment that I just want to clarify @Silas Robert Shaw 8122 says, love the Roman reference. And I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about with Roman. You're talking about Roman Roy from Succession, Silas? Are you talking about the Roman Empire, perhaps? I don't know exactly what you're talking about. Roman Anthony of the Red Sox? So if you could clarify for me, I appreciate that. If you leave another comment, my guy. But he says the Padres need to take someone who could deal with the egos and has some experience as head coach. The Chargers finally bit the bullet and hired a real coach in Harbaugh, and he changed the culture immediately. That's what is needed. I kind of get that. I will say I sometimes worry a little bit, even though I also am like this too. There's just so many big time players on this team. A lot of guys that are acquired via trade and stuff like that, and getting paid a lot of money. But I do sometimes wonder a little bit, let's be a little bit careful and not assume totally that it's just that you've got divas in the baseball dugout. Right? I don't want to assume that, especially about guys like Manny Machado and Tatis. It's just, let's just be careful, you know what I mean? And just not make too many assumptions. But I totally get what you're saying. Just have someone who's going to be in that room and be like, I am the top dog here. You know what I mean? I've been the guy. Totally understand that. Which might lead you to believe that the choice the Padres should make is Albert Pujols. Does Javier think that? Well, we'll talk about that more, guys, because we got a question about it from... Sorry, I hate to do that to you guys, but first we got to talk about one of our sponsors. That is our friends over at Game Time. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team, but getting tickets can be a hassle. It's really frustrating with the login screens and all that. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best prices. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay, right? It's great. And what I love about it, they've got, seat views when you're viewing the app, right? It's great. They just, before you purchase it, they'll show you. They have a bunch of different deals kind of popping off all the time. Tickets getting cheaper closer to game time. So if your plans change, they've got a zone deals option, which you pick a section of the stadium, they choose the seat, and you get a discount. It's just easier and less stressful than any other way that I've bought tickets before. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Download Game Time today. And just like that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing into the final segment of the Locked On Padres podcast. Going to tease a preview some future episodes as well at the end, so stay tuned for that. Let's talk about some more mailbag questions and talk about Albert Pujols specifically. Phoenix Ash 927, frequent listener of the pod. Love you, my man. He says, get a manager who vibes with the demographics of the team. I bet the fun, loose swagger with Manny and Tatis thrives under someone like Pujols. Not trying to race bait here or anything like that, just saying these two are the cornerstone of our team. We need them both carrying this team. Why not give our Dominican brothers a Dominican, massively successful hitter as their next manager? Here's what I want to focus on the most that you said there, which is just kind of like the hype, kind of like the energy, right? The loose swagger I want to focus on. There is something to be said, And don't get me wrong, this also is not implying that players don't respect Mike Schill. I'm certain they do. I've heard that they really do, right? From some offline sources. Like, I've heard only, like, that's not the case that it's like players only listen to guys that are superstar players and like really played and, you know, have the 700 home runs and all that. I think naturally people will just be like, yo, that's Albert Pujols, man. Like, that's kind of sick. You know what I mean? That would be me if I was in the Padres dugout. I'd be like, yo, that's kind of tight. Like, this is cool that we just have this guy. The aura would be amazing. I imagine, frankly, that, you know, not to be cynical about this, but it is a corporation we're talking about here, that the Padres ownership might be like, bro, hiring that dude, that'll be like a huge announcement and everybody will want to see that, right? Just from like the blockbuster appeal sense. And part of me is like, you know, it's not that this Padres team has been quiet. This is not a team that's silent and one that's like trying to hide. This isn't Justin Herbert, who like is scared of cameras and is a pretty introverted person, right? This isn't someone like that. You know what I mean? You know, but it would be really kind of cool, I think, to just be like, you know what? Let's have someone that just like let's just go for aura farming. You know what I mean? Let's just go all based on vibes. It would be a new thing to do. It would not necessarily be different than my complaint about this could be just an extension of the front office. I don't know if that works. It's really difficult, right, to say that. And I think that it would just be really fun, though. It would be a guy that would command respect. And I think that he would know how to go about having a lot of respect and still keeping the swagger. So I kind of like that. I think it would be really, really fun to have someone like that in the Padres dugout and just add a sense of, we're really serious, man. You know what I mean? I think that that's what this could be as a hiring. And I don't want to hate on the Nick Hundley possibility either. I don't want to hate on Ruben Niebla, who we all love, right? I just think that I am kind of with you, man. I am kind of with Ash here. I am a little bit Pujols pilled now. I just like the idea of being like, man, imagine in a Dodgers game, like how much that dude will be with us. You know what I mean? Or he'll be like, don't worry, guys, just ignore it. You know what I mean? I played for them. It's all good. I think having that could be really impressive. And I think that's very interesting that he's even emerged as a candidate to begin with. Whether it is just because, like, hey, Blockbuster, the owner's like, yeah, this will sell tickets for us. That could be a possibility. But what I also heard is that the second interview with Pujols lasted like 8 hours. Like, they really talked with this guy for a long time. So I'm really, really curious to see how they go about this. And it would be different. And it would be by far the biggest name that the Padres have had. Bob Melvin was a big name, but also he wasn't like, you know, he didn't have that like 700 home run aura and all that stuff. So I'd be a fan. And let me tell you, I'm just a little, you know, under the curtain. You guys know, content-wise, your boy would not mind if the Padres hired Albert Pujols. You know what I mean? I could do like 70 episodes talking about Pujols. Are you kidding me? Everybody's going to want to talk about that. So that would be a lot of fun. But I also like what someone else brought up here. Mr. at Darth Vader 220201 says, I don't think AJ was necessarily thinking Albert Pujols. He needs a better hitting coach if contact is the only option. And forgetting the power, we need another starter in place of Darvish. He just doesn't have it anymore. Like, swap between the two starting pitchers and the one doing better will be moved in long relief. So a couple things there that you said. I think AJ clearly is thinking about Pujols. This was an old comment, but I think when it comes to the bullpen thing, I think Darvish is also, we've talked about this a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about it, just like what is going to happen, I think, with what is, how do I put this? Like, how, to what extent is Yu Darvish potentially retiring? Like, to what extent is that a possibility, and to what extent will that help the team in their payroll is a big, big question. So we'll have to see. We'll absolutely have to see. Another comment that we got here, let me see if I can find it. At the Dave5748, and talking about Ruben Niebla, he says, give it to Niebla, because otherwise we'll probably lose him. And I want to talk about that really quickly. If the Padres lose him, right, if they don't give him the manager job, does that mean that another team will be like, bro, we'll give you the manager job, right? There are some vacancies out there right now. So I could see a world in which Ruben Niebla's like, hey, look, I've done my time as pitching coach. I'm ready to be in charge of the whole team. I'm ready to get that extra salary, all that sort of stuff. Put my name in the annals of history. I could see that, and is actually a great point I didn't think about, and I would be a little bit worried about, especially if there is a possibly open spot elsewhere. I will say we haven't really seen any rumors of that. We have not seen any rumors of people talking to Ruben Niebla. Now, I imagine that things can change, right? But I do think that there is a lot of potential of keeping Ruben Niebla in the bullpen, as well as having him as the manager. I mean, he literally is the most successful out of all the candidates that are reportedly finalists, right? Like, look what he's done with his pitching staff. I think it would be fun. I like that he just goes out there and says a few words, and for some reason the pitchers just lock back in. I love him. So it would be really cool to see what he could do there, but I also wouldn't mind just keeping him as a pitching coach because he's been, frankly, just legendary in that spot. But not going to lie, if they didn't have Ruben Niebla and he went to another team, it does give the vibe of, not like what the Dodgers fans say, where they act like Dave Roberts is the reason that they're winning World Series, but more of the, oh man, we should have known, man. This dude was killing it with pitching, and he turns out to be one of the next great managers elsewhere. I could see that happening. So again, that's why I'm not fully Pujols. It's really hard, guys. It's really hard to decide between all of these candidates. I think that it's going to be, just really, really fascinating to see what they do. Another comment that we got, last thing I want to talk about really quickly before we preview some episode topics. Brandon Linquist says, why are you so late with the uploads? It's been a weird time for me. I'm actually focusing on potentially it's some regular day job stuff, and also I might be moving. So like, just it's been a little bit of a hassle, and I've just been frankly not organizing as best as I should. And some of the episodes are, I feel like, posted pretty early. That's why I've been trying to schedule some ahead of time. But I'm going to try and get better at that. Admittedly, I just want to let everybody know, all the longtime listeners, I am trying to get better with the uploads. But I will say, for now, I've just unfortunately had some personal stuff that I'm dealing with on top of the move and all that. And the numbers for me right now don't get greatly impacted by my upload time. So, but again, I'm going to work on it. We have a whole off season to work on stuff. I want to start posting more shorts for you guys and just giving you more content on all things Padres and occasionally general baseball. We're actually going to do a really fun episode on Friday for Fun Friday with Paul Holden. Let's preview the topics now. On Friday's episode with Paul Holden, it's going to be recorded ahead of time, so don't worry about being late. We're going to do an award show for free agents, right? Like the most likely to do this, right? The biggest trap, the guy that we didn't even realize was free agent. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be talking with Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies about that. Also going to be talking and doing the pitching side of things when it comes to the bullpen, year in review for the Padres bullpen, working on that as well. And there's still some other mailbag questions that I want to get to, some about Xander Bogaerts, some about specific free agents, and some other targets that you might not have thought of, like Yandy Diaz, right? And I imagine by the time this podcast gets uploaded, and then by the next day, I'm going to get more Dodgers trolls. And I love responding to the Dodgers trolls, and I hope that you guys do every now and then too, right? So with that all being said, guys, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow myself on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. But until next time, stay safe and of course, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies. Take care.